Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this video, I want to discuss the current affairs that's happening with the Muslims and the Ummah, their connection with their scholars, and, again, being let down by some of these preachers. And the reason why I'm making this video is not to disconnect you with scholars and not to promote, that we should constantly be suspicious of the scholars. But I want to inform you to say that you need to stop attaching yourselves to personalities. And you should always not accept everything blindly. You should always test what they say. So if a scholar gets up on the minbar and he starts talking to you about Islam, do fact checking, because there's just so many personalities out there that you don't know if they're actually following. So fact checking is important. Go online, check their credentials, see which university they've graduated from, and do in-depth research of what aqidah they actually follow, because you'll find that you look at his scholarship, it says he's a graduate of this university and he has a jurisprudence in Sharia, and then you find out that the person is on the Ash'ari creed or Sufi creed or whatever. And so it's really, really important that you need to understand, just because someone studies a particular field, it doesn't mean that he's now an authority. And we're seeing that, even through Yasir Qadi. Yasir Qadi is a prominent Sunni scholar who studied at Medina, but when he went to a Western university, he had a dramatic shift in his creed and aqidah and his beliefs. And so we're living in the times of fitna. We're living in problematic times. We've got anti-Islamists writing articles trying to change Islam, and they're trying to promote this thing about there are many different interpretations of the Quran and they're all valid. They all have their own validations. And this is an attempt to discredit Islam, to show that, there's conjecture, and so we need to, it's a way of trying to mend and shift people's opinions on traditional Islam. And again, I'm not saying that their differences of opinions don't exist. Of course they do. But when you look at their difference of opinion, they're trying to change something that's totally agreed upon by the ulama. For example, the hijab. I'm not talking about the niqab. I'm not talking about the burqa. I'm talking about the normal hijab, the one that just covers their hair. They are even now using, they're claiming they're high scholars, and we'll go through each individual in the article, and they're saying, look, these particular scholars are saying, no, even that is now, there's difference of opinion on that. They've even got an article mentioned on the Huffington Post. It says, quote, 5 Muslim scholars on the permissibility of not wearing the headscarf. They go on to write, the headscarf worn by Muslim women is often a subject of immense debate in the media. It is done by various reasons, from the personal to the political, is imposed on many but freely adopted by others. A piece of clothing that should ideally be an issue of freedom of choice and expression, and has been heavily politicized. They go to talk about this has led to the oppression of Muslim women. It is enforced as a religious obligation, sometimes under great moral duress. A young Muslim Canadian was murdered for not wearing it. And so, they're going on talking about physical assault for one who does not wear it, trying to, muddy the waters, poison the well, as you say, pick isolated cases to try and say, it's a radical interpretation to try and force this. And, we have dress codes here in, the West. If you go outside naked, you'll be arrested. So yeah, they've got dress codes here as well. And they basically know that there is a huge consensus that among the ulama, among all of the scholars, the correct scholars, about it being, wajib or fard. And this is agreed upon. And so it is must that a Muslim woman wears it. It's not optional, yeah. And so what do? They say, nope. However, it illustrates to highlight the voices of few Muslim male scholars. So look, they're appealing to few Muslim male scholars in the article, as you can see here. See? Few Muslim male scholars who support the permissibility of not wearing the headscarf, right? So we'll go through who these scholars are, by the way, and you'll see the deception. But before we do that, I want to draw your attention to this. We've got our scholars, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, you got all those great scholars in Egypt, in Saudi, you'll have them in Pakistan, you'll have those big great scholars, right? And upon Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and you'll still see people saying, oh, but Yasir Qadi is a scholar, he graduated from Medina, and they then appeal to not the consensus ulama, they go to minorities and say, oh, look, he said these things. And some of the things that he says are controversial, right? And so what we need to do is we need to move away from this idea that we need to go to a minority view or an isolated case. And this is what we call fatwa sharks. They ignore the majority, the ulama, and they go and try and look for an isolated interpretation. Again, I'm not saying that all isolated interpretations are wrong. They could be right. But the general rule is, to be on the safe side, we stick to a consensus rule of the ulama, the ijma. And so this is something that we need to keep in mind, especially in these times where there is so much heretics coming out claiming that they're scholars, and you find so many problems and people being misled. And then what happens is, when people follow that methodology of sticking blindly to a particular scholar, and when they get betrayed, they go into self-denial, they go into even questioning their faith, they go into depression, anxiety, and they basically lose trust with the religion itself. And we need to learn a lesson to not attach ourselves to personalities. Mufti Menk, for example, has made some outrageous statements. We've documented that in the last video, where he says he won't force someone out of homosexuality, how he says he'll shake the hand of a non-mahram, and people have looked up to him as an idol, as a role model, as a person who lives on traditional Islam, and he looks traditional Islam. You see him with a long beard and mashallah wearing the whole. Again, I'm showing you. I'm not here to attack Mufti Menk or some of these scholars, but I'm trying to show you that they can make errors, and sometimes it's not just errors, they do sometimes have their own ideologies, and you need to be aware of that. And so let's get back to this article. Here we go. Who are these scholars who are saying that the headscarf is not really permissible? Khalid Abu Al-Fadi is his name. Have a look. Khalid Abu Al-Fadi. Fadil. He says he finds it ironic that the headscarf has become symbolic of Islamic identity. Look at this. He can't believe it's become a symbolic of Islamic identity. By the way, this is all put together by this individual, Junaid Jahangir, assistant professor, McEwen University, Western University. Okay. And who is this Dr. Junaid Jahangiri? He's an assistant professor of economics at McEwen University. He is inspired by the elder Muslim mystics, Sufis. With Dr. Hussein Abdul Latif, he has co-authored Islamic law and Muslim same-sex unions. And who is this guy? He's an advocate for same-sex marriages, a homosexual advocate. He's got a book, Islamic Law and Muslim Same-Sex Union. It says this book builds a case for Muslim same-sex unions for the fulfillment of gay and lesbian Muslims. Human needs for intimacy, affection, and companionship. In construction this case, the book simply engages with the Muslim tradition. So this homosexual advocate is the same guy talking about how there are scholars, apparently, that a minority, obviously a minority, he's appealing to a minority that is forbidding the wearing of the veil. So who are these high profile, look at this, who are these high profile Muslim scholars that he looks up to, that shows that it's not permissible for wearing the headscarf? Khalid Abu Al-Fadi. Let's have a look. Oh, it's ironic. It's this guy. So let's have a look. There you go. This belly flop here, right? Beardless belly flop. Okay. And notice how they try say, oh, look how religious I am. I'll take a photo with all these books. Let me show off to you all to say, hey, look how knowledgeable I am. The deception. This is a deception they play. The image they play. It says Khalid Abu Al-Fadi, Islamic jurisprudence. That's the courses he's conducted. You can see here it says he is also the chair of Islamic Studies Program, University, California. Now this gets even more interesting when you see this here. Look, he has alma masters at Yale University. Did you see that? Yale, academic background, Yale University, Princeton University, Pennsylvania. Now, isn't that interesting? That's the same university of Yasser Qadi. The same Yasser Qadi who, after studying at Yale, he said he has doubts about Islam. So after studying at Yale, he said calling upon the saints is not shirk. He although he disagrees with homosexuality morally, he agrees with homosexuality from a political standpoint. So he follows democracy and secularism that allows homosexuals to have their rights. Well, I wonder if one day the government, from a political standpoint, if they say that pedophilia is okay, is he also going to agree with pedophilia from a political standpoint? He then says, he agrees with you can take from the Ash'ari Creed. Keep that in mind, Ash'ari Creed. You can take from the Maturidi Creed, retracts what he says about Shiism, because he obviously said Shiism are the worst of liars, and then he's turned around and he disagrees with his old statement. Says the standard narrative has holes in it. This is regarding the authenticity of the Quranic transmission, textual criticism. Although he believes that the Quran is preserved, he believes that there are questions and doubts put into him while studying at Yale, and that he doesn't have the answers of those questions till today. He takes himself out of Salafiyah. He says that Yajuj and Majuj are like zombies, and he questions the authenticity of the hadith, saying obviously it's sort of metaphorical or something, or it just, or it's a weak narration. It didn't really happen. He then says stoning is bizarre, problematic, and a scare tactic. So the punishment, the had punishment for stoning doesn't really apply. And so these are this is meant to be scholar of the highest eminence who's graduated from Medina. And so what more can you expect from people like Khalid Abu Al-Fadi, who's happened to study at the same university, Yale University, and he's influenced by Muhammad al-Ghazali, who previously obviously had Sufi beliefs. The same guy Al-Fadi, who criticizes the Sunni jurisprudence, the Salafi scholars, and he criticizes them as Wahhabi Islam. See? And these are the guys that are telling us that the hijab is not permissible in Islam. So these are their scholars. This is the scholar that they refer to, the minority scholars that they want us to believe is evidence. Let's go to the next person, Javed Ahmed Kamadi. This person says he argues that there are only 4 instructions that pertain to Muslim women. These include lowering the gaze, wearing the modest clothing, covering the bosoms with a piece of cloth, and not displaying ornamental embellishments before unrelated men. No other injunction other than these has been imposed on Muslim women. So basically, he says, he clearly mentioned that the khimar veil was neither a religious act nor did it pertain to modesty, and even the Quran's use of the word without legal connotations. He argues that Islam does not make it mandatory for women to cover their heads. Unbelievable, eh? Yes, this is the guy. Another beardless liberal secular from Pakistan. And here you can see that Javed al-Qadami is an actual liberalist who believes a separation of fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, from Sharia, divine law. This is a major deviant belief, clearly busted. He does not believe in Sharia should be part of politic systems. He's clearly another phony scholar. And look at his notables, separation of fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence. He's and here you can see this part's interesting. Counter discourse mystic interpretation of Islam Sufism, and it says here, reinterpretation of hadith under the framework of Quran. More like under the framework of secular Western political correctness. So that now that two has been busted, look at the third. Abdullah bin Bayah. Bin Bayah adopts an approach based on necessity. He argues that the hardships allow for uncovering of body parts, as mentioned, and mentioned how the shins of the two of the Prophet's wives, Aisha and Salama, were uncovered when they were giving water to wounded soldiers. So you want to use that as evidence during war. You know, people dying, soldiers falling over, and her shin was uncovered. Wow, how disgusting are these interpretations, eh? So yeah, he's basically saying the laws are there to serve human beings. We are not to serve the law. We are there to serve Allah, and this is why whenever the law does not serve you, you're permitted to abandon it, and that is actually following the law. The law is out to benefit, not harm. Therefore, the law harms us. We no longer have to abide by it. So you don't have to abide by wearing the hijab. And let's see who this individual is. Well, this individual is that person, and named Sheikh, region Saudi Arabia. It says denomination Sunni, jurisprudence Maliki, but the creed and movement is what? Sufi. I mean, even Shaitan will be confused with this guy, yeah? So he's, Sunni, he's Sufi, Maliki, Ashari, influenced by who? Hamza Yusuf, another person that's deviant. I mean, it's just, it's a whole cocktail, isn't it? Now, remember what Yasir Qadi said? You can take from the Ashari creed. Look at that, Ashari creed. He's currently the president of the Forum of Promoting Peace in Muslim Society. Teletubby Sheikh. Yeah, the Teletubbies. He's involved in Islamic fiqh, International Union of Muslim Scholars in the West. Interesting, eh? Council of Fatwa and Research. He's on the European Council of Fatwa and Research. Let's now go to number 4 on the list, Ahmed Gabel. So who is this high-profile Muslim scholar? The late Shia cleric. Allah Mustan. Allah Mustan. These are the people that are supposed to represent Sunni Islam, yeah? But what? They're even showing Shia scholars to speak on behalf of Islamic jurisprudence, Sunni scholarship, about al-Aqidah, about our beliefs. They even introduce the Shia into the conversation. He joined the consensus among jurists, consensus among who? The kuffar jurists, as to whether hair constitutes the awra, intimate part that must be covered. Let's just move along. That was just bad taste in the mouth, yeah. So let's go to number 5. Let's see the high-profile scholar, Nasser Abu Zaid. According to the late Abu Zaid, both the awra, intimate parts, and the hijab veil are subject to social cultural norms and therefore are challengeable and not fixed. He opined that both are not legislated under Islam, but really specifically to the Arab culture. Amazing. So it's just culture, guys. It's not really part of Islam. No. All of those Quran verses, all of the hadiths, and by the way, I'll put a hyperlink below this video showing you all the Quran verses, all the hadiths, that prove all of these things. But, look at this. Look at this. So who is Nasser Abu Zaid? Another beardless. Have a look. That's him, boys and girls. From Egypt, Cairo. Well, this guy, he actually, Nasser Abu Zaid, he claimed that the Quran was a cultural product and declared an apostate by a Sharia court. Thus, another clear deviant. Unbelievable, isn't it? He was declared an apostate by Sharia courts. And yeah, so there you have it. I mean, apostates, they're using apostate scholars to show that the hijab is not mandatory, it's not part of Islam, it's just cultural. Um, so there you have it. This is the arguments they use. These are the scholars that they apparently bring up, folks. And so let's see the conclusion of the Huffington Post after they name all these scholars, 5 scholars. They write in their conclusion, in essence, these opinions serve to offer a richer set of information in support of freedom of choice and expression. The headscarf pertains to women. It is Muslim women who decide to reject the headscarf despite apostasy threats or to wear it in the face of potential harassment and assault. The decision is theirs and theirs alone. So, do you notice what they're doing here? They're basically saying, look, it's your decision. It's not even an Islamic requirement. We have these 5 murtad scholars, right? And, deviant, secular, liberal sellouts. We've got them to support you. If you want, it's not mandatory to wear the hijab. It's your freedom of choice. It's your personal choice now, right? You could take it off. You don't have to wear it. It's not mandatory. You can still be a Muslim and not have a hijab, right? You don't have to follow one set of interpretation in the Quran. You can ignore all of the Islamic literature and the ulama and all the consensus of the scholars and highest scholars. But you know what? We're going to pretend that we've got 5 scholars who are reputable, who are high qualified scholars, and we're going to use that as a backing to now change your mind that the hijab is not really Islamic. So notice, folks, see how they're working day and night to change Islam, to manipulate Islam, to misguide you, right? So you need to be aware of the agenda, the war that's taking place. And then they'll play an emotional game. Oh, you'll be killed. That side is extreme, While in secular Western hemispheres, they have laws that, if you go out naked, or if you don't have that sort of dress wear, you could get arrested. But look, the other side is extreme. So you get the point, folks. The point of this whole video is to be careful of what they're actually presenting. This homosexual sympathizer, Junaid Jangir, no wonder he puts together this wild accusation that the hijab is not